Hello students, myself Om Prakash Katte and you are welcome to Biology Reward. Students, today we are discussing the class 10th chapter how do organism reproduce, and our topic is reproduction in flowering plants. So as a reproduction in flowering plant we are discussing. Before that, students, you tell what is the name of this part of the plant. So this part which I am showing to you, what is the name of the part of the plant? So we remember this part of the plant. Similarly, one more part of the plants I have taken. So both these are the flowers of the plant. So students, we are discussing regarding the reproductive part of the plant and reproduction in flowering plant. So when we are discussing the reproduction in flowering plant, so very important part is flower. And this flower is a sexual organ of the plant. This flower is called the sexual organ of the plant. So we have to discuss about the different part of the flower at first. So if you will see children, this one flower, in this flower the green color of the part, and this combined green color of the part is called this green color of the part which I am detaching, and this green color of the part, this one part is called the calyx. So in this part, calyx, individual part of the calyx is called the sepal. So sepal is a green color of part. In this flower we can see this flower also, this green color of part is calyx, and individual part of the calyx, it is called the sepal. So here is one sepal, another sepal, and I am removing this one sepal. So this green color part of the flower is called the sepal. Then second is this decorative part, colorful part. So this colorful part which I am detaching, this one part, it is called the petal. This is also petal. So this color part of the flower are called the petal. So these are the all petals. Similarly, in this also you can see this is another flower. So the white color of part, this one color of part, this is called the petal part. So petal, these are the petal part of the flower. So first part green color sepal, and this part are the combinedly these petal parts is called the corolla. Okay, so these parts are called the petal part of the flower. So after removing the sepal and petal, now you will see another third part of the flower, and this part, individual part, this one, it is called the stamen. This part is the male part of the flower. This is also stamen. So, and last one part of the flower, it is the female part. This is called the pistil. So this time we have the four part of the flower. Remember this first part I told you, sepal. So flower is a sexual organ of the plant, sexual part of the plant. So this flower is having four parts. First one part, sepal. As I told you, these are the green part, and this green part help for the protection of the bird as well as for the photosynthesis because they are green in color. Second part which I told you, petal, and these are the colorful part of the plant, and they help for the pollination because they attract the insect. And third part, as I told you, that is the stamen, and the stamen is called the male part of the flower, and this produces male gamete. Pollen grains are produced in the stamen. And third part, as I told you, pistil or carpel, and it is called the female part of the flower, and it produces female gamete, and this female gamete is called the egg. So thus there are four important parts in a flower. Out of four important parts, stamen is a male part and carpel is a female part of the flower. So there are some flower where only stamens or carpel are present. It means either male parts are present or female part is present. So this type of flower where stamens or carpel only occur. Either stamen occurs or carpel is occurred. So this type of flowers are called unisexual flower. Unisexual flower, it means they bear only one type of sex. Either they have male part or they are having female part. So such type of flowers are called unisexual flower. Papaya and watermelon, these are the example of some unisexual flower. Similarly, some flower bear the both. They have both part, male part stamen and female part carpel or pistils also. These flowers are called bisexual flower. Mustard, hibiscus, it means China rose, mango, all these plants are having the bisexual flower. So on basis of male part and or female part is present, only one part, that is called unisexual flower. If both parts are present, that is called the bisexual flower. So if you will see the structure of a flower, and this structure of flower is very depicted. Here is this part of the flower, it is called the carpel or pistil. Carpel or pistil. So this part of the flower, stigma, style and ovary. So this complete part of the flower, it is called the ovary, it is called the style and it is the stigma. So this is the female part of the ovary, which we used to say carpel or pistil. So what are the three parts in pistil or carpel? Stigma, style and ovary. This is also depicted here, stigma, style, ovary. And inside the ovary, here ovules occurs. Number of ovules may be one or many. So this structure is called the ovule. And this is the part, female part of the flower. Then this part, this is called the male part of the flower. So this type of structure, this is the structure, and this type number may be varied. It may be 2, 3, 5, multiple of 5. So this structure is called the male part. It is called the stamen. So each stamen is having the anther. This structure is called anther. This structure is called it is filament. And inside the anther, here some pollen grains are occur. These are the pollen grains, or we are saying male gamete. So male gametes occurs in the anther. So again see, male part of the flower, it is called the stamen. Stamen is having anther and filament. Inside the anther there are pollen grain or male gametes. Here also I have mentioned these are the male gamete or pollen grain. And anther is bithecal. There are the two shacks of the anther. So it is dithecal structure or it is also called bithecal structure. So anther is bithecal. So this like of structure you will see, and inside there are the pollen grain. Now these are the two parts, female part and male part. Here green color of the part occurs in the flower. So this type of structure which are called the sepal, and combinedly all the sepal of the flower are called calyx. And another part which attract to insect, to colorful part, this type of structure we can say, and these are the petal. So now you can understand there are the four part of the flower. In this diagram also you can understand the four part of the flower. One, sepal, petal, stamen and pistil or carpel. Stamen is male part of the flower, whereas carpel or pistil is the female part of flower. So in male part of the flower, pollen grains are formed, and female part of the flower, ovule, and inside the ovule egg is developed. So it is all about the structure of flower. Second important part is, that is pollination. Now in pollination is what? What is the pollination? So Generally what happen after the maturation of the pollen grain? So this pollen grain get matured and this transfer, the transfer of pollen grain on the stigma or flower. So when pollen grain are transferred on the stigma, suppose I am having the one flower, this is the stigma, style, and this is stigma part, style part, and ovary. So if I am having the male part, here pollen grain, so these pollen grains are here. There are the pollen grain. So this pollen grain, they reach on the stigma of the flower. So this process where pollen grains, they reach on the stigma of the flower. So when pollen grains are laying on the stigma of the flower, so when pollen grain reach on the stigma of the flower, this process is called pollination. After the part of the flower, now another topic we have, subtopic, it is pollination. Students, pollination is what? Pollen grain transfer on the stigma of the flower. So this process is called the pollination. So it is a process in which pollen grain transfer on the stigma of the flower. Suppose these are the pollen grain and these are transferring on the stigma of the flower. So this simple process, it is called pollination. Transfer of pollen grain on the stigma. There are two types of pollination, one self-pollination and another is cross-pollination. If pollen grain is transferred on the stigma of the same flower, look at here, this is the one flower, this is the male part and these are the stamens. And this is the stigma of the flower. So from male part, pollen grain release and they reach on the stigma of the flower. So when they reach on the stigma of the same flower, so it is called self-pollination. So self-pollination is what? Pollen grain transfer on the stigma of same flower. Here we have the two flowers, 1 and 2. This pollen grain of this flower and they transfer on the stigma of the other flower, but these flowers are having the same species. Okay, so the pollen grain transfer on the stigma of the other flower of the another plant of same species. Suppose this flower is on the one plant and this flower is on the another plant. I am taking this is the rose plant, this is also rose plant. So during the pollination, the pollen grain of the one flower of the one plant, it transfer on the stigma of the other flower of the other plant, and that is of same species. So the self-pollination, pollen grain transfer on stigma of the same flower, and cross-pollination, the pollen grain transfer on the stigma of the other flower of another plant of same species. And this pollination is take place by some agencies. So these agencies are called pollinating agency. So these agencies are called pollinating agency or agent. So pollen grain transferred through air, it transferred by the water, the pollen grain transferred by insect and birds also, they are called pollinating agent. When the pollen grains are transferred on the stigma of the flower. So what happened now? When these pollen grains are rich on the stigma of the flower. So what happened when pollen grain reach on the stigma of the flower? Then what happened? This pollen grain, they get germinated. So when pollen grain get germinated, so these are the pollen grain and these all pollen grains, when they are getting the suitable condition, they germinate on the stigma and this pollen tube is arising. This tube is called the pollen tube. So this pollen tube, now here inside the ovary, this is the ovary part, there is a ovule. So inside the ovary, there is a ovule part. This I have made the ovule. This pollen tube, now it goes and enter inside the ovule. Okay, so this one where the entry of pollen tube take place inside the ovary. So this small pore is called the micropyle region. So due to the micropyle small pore is there, this aperture is there, and through this aperture the pollen tube enter inside the ovary. So pollen grain shifted on the stigma, they get germinated. This tube is called the pollen tube, and this pollen tube now it enter inside the ovule, and this pollen tube is having the male and female gamete. Pollen tube is having the male gamete, and this male gamete will fuse with the female gamete. So this is the process after pollination. Pollen grain germinate, pollen tube is formed, and the pollen tube enter inside the ovule where egg is present. Now another important part is fertilization. Now what happens in fertilization? When male and female gamete it means pollen grain, and female gamete it is the egg. So this male and female gametes inside the this is the stigma, ovary. So inside ovary I told you this is the ovule part. So ovule is there. So when pollen tube is from this one, after pollen grain germination, pollen tube, and this pollen tube is enter inside the ovule part. In this case, this is the female gamete, and this one is the male gamete. So the male and female gamete they get fused. So that process is called fertilization. The fusion of male gamete with female gamete is called the fertilization. And by the fertilization, now what happens? This one fertilized ovule. This male gamete and female gamete fuse, and they form the zygote. So here zygote is formed. Zygote is the diploid structure, and the zygote is formed inside. Now after this procedure of fertilization, what to write? In this case, the male gamete of pollen grain and female gamete of the ovule they get fertilized, and zygote is formed. Now after the formation of zygote, in flower I told you there are the 4 parts in the flower. So in flower 4 parts, after the fertilization what happens? Sepal and petal they dry up and they fall down. Sepal and petal they dry up and they fall down. Here ovule which was present in the ovary, it formed the seed. It means seed is a matured ovule. What happened? Ovule I told you inside the ovary, this was the ovary and here was the ovule. So this ovule get mature and is changed into the seed. So ovule form seed, ovule form the seed, and the ovary is from the fruit. Ovary is from the fruit. So this is the post fertilization event. Sepal and petal dry up and they fall off, and ovules forms seed and ovary form the fruit. Ovary form fruit. Now the seed is formed from the ovule. So mature ovule is from the seed. If we will see the seed of the seed is the matured ovule. Ovule is developed into the seed. So this seed is, it is matured ovule. Seed is a matured ovule and it covered with seed coat and contain embryo. So if we will see in seed, it is the first part mature ovule, and second seed, this is suppose the one seed, it is having the outermost layering and which is the hard covering part, and this is called the seed coat. So and another part is here embryo. So each seed is having the baby plant or embryo. So this is the embryo part. If I am taking the one seed of bean seed or gram seed or pea seed, in such type of seed we have to keep the seed in water overnight, and once we are dissecting the seed, so we are getting the 3 important part of the embryo, and these 3 important part of the embryo are this type. So when the seed get appropriate condition and that germinated, that is called seed germination, and this seed is germinated, it means there is an embryo inside each seed, and embryo is having the three structure. One is called plumule, another is called radicle, and this is called the cotyledon. It is dicot seed, so two cotyledons are here, but monocot seed, you will see one cotyledon. Now, seed is having seed coat, outermost covering, and there is a baby plant which we used to say embryo. What is the structure of embryo? Embryo is having plumule, and further this plumule is developed into the shoot, or it is also called stem, and a radicle will develop into the root, and this cotyledon it stores food. So question is asked, what is germination? So germination is a process in which the seed get appropriate condition and it germinated. Each seed is having a baby plant, and this is seed is baby plant is embryo, and this embryo is having three parts: plumule, which further develop into shoot, radicle is developed into root, and cotyledon is developed into the cotyledon. Cotyledon it help for store food. So this is all about sexual reproduction in flowering plant.